So, everybody, the next session is titled The Future of Long-Term Care in South Africa. Now, it's difficult to make predictions. However, I thought it was necessary to look at the different perspectives at different extremes of our sector. And I want to invite you to listen to the next session with encouragement, because first of all, we're going to have Tim Gibson from a new development in Howick called the Amber Glades. Tim and his team have been extremely committed to person-centered care. In fact, for a facility that's opening in August this year, I stand to be corrected, but I think Tim's entire team, from his quantities surveyor, the OTs, the care manager, even the attorneys, have been on the person-centered care training with the Eden Alternative. And that, for me, speaks massive volume about the commitment to person-centered care. Tim has built a tremendous facility. I would go so far as to say world-class. It was a special project for us because they were incredibly engaging and receptive of suggestions with regards to space and planning and use of the right equipment in the right time. Tim, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. It's going to be so exciting to have you open, and I look forward to that. Famida, thank you for joining us. Famida is the CEO of TAFTA in Durban, and my heart goes out to all of the non-profit organizations. Yes, we've got TAFTA, but we've got Bedisa, we've got Engo, we've got Residencia, we've got RCF, FIA, Trans 50, all big organizations that are doing tremendous work with let's say, limited resources. You know, doing so much with relatively little. So we look forward to hearing your stories about how long, or should I say, the future of long-term care in South Africa. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, Famida. Tim, you're going to go first.
Yes, thanks very much, Steve, and for inviting us to be part of this conference, and for just really the opportunity to share our story. We're very aware that there are so many special people involved in this industry, and there are various ways you can do things, and really it's just us wanting to share how we've approached this project, and hopefully you guys can glean something from it, and there's some questions, and it's really just with that heart of wanting to share within the industry and to try and understand, you know, how we can learn more, etc. But really the Amber story started in the Natal Midlands in Howick just over 20 years ago, with the Taylors starting the Amber Field retirement village, and since then, over the last 20 odd years, 2,000 sectional title houses have been built with associated facilities, frail care and recreational facilities, and it's been incredible just to see the effect that's had on the town, and also just how that whole community has evolved. And so really our journey, we've been sort of involved in the last 10 years or so, but most recently we had a piece of land that in essence got engulfed by the Ambers and became part of the spatial development plan. And we engaged with our neighbors. We surveyed about 1,500 houses to try and work out the best possible way we could use this land. And really what came back quite strongly was, as this community's aged, so to give you some idea, Amberfield and Amber Glen over the last 20 years have got to an average age now of around about 80. So retirement communities obviously age in time, and one sees how the needs change. And so what came back very strongly was a real need for more what we refer to as assisted living. And that started us on an incredible journey of reading lots of books and speaking to a lot of people and visiting places, and realizing that this sector of retirement has probably changed the most out of any sector within retirement in the last 20 years. And really just started us on this journey of how do how do we create the best possible senior living community that we possibly can? And that's what we refer to Amber Glades as. And part of this journey was coming across the Eden Alternative and understanding the mindset that comes with that sort of training. And so, as you've mentioned, we got the Eden guys to come to Natal. It wasn't that difficult, as you guys know. This is obviously the land of milk and honey. But yeah, they came and we had the entire team, everybody from, as you said, from the accountant to the QS and the architect and the envisaged care team. And why that was so important is that when you're driving the design process, everyone's on board and you're all pulling in the same direction. So when you start talking about a sensory room, the architect understands what that is and how important it is. The QS is able to find something in the budget for that, and everyone just works together to a common good. And so we really just realized that we had to create an area and a building in which we can really just encourage a senior living community to thrive and to live the best possible lives. And along with that came the strong realization that you're going to really define yourself with your care team and how you present your care. And so part of the journey was meeting, obviously, with you guys and Arjo, and just thank you for walking with us and partnering in terms of understanding what kind of equipment we can introduce to make sure that the care team are able to do the best possible job. And that's obviously key to defining yourself in the industry. So we sort of often talk about the fact that you can be in the most beautiful hotel in the world, but be the most miserable person if you don't have the right sort of community and the right people around you. So even in selecting the care team, we looked at people that were already involved in the community and just the heart they had and the way they were doing things that appealed to us. So we approached individuals to see if they wanted to come onto our team, and so our village manager is an OT, a really remarkable woman that's been involved in the community for a while, and we all, the whole care team, have just got a particular strong point, and it's just really a case of creating a team that can give the best possible care. And so really that's our story in a nutshell. Is we've tried to create a building that allows us to present care in a certain way that will enable the community to thrive as a senior living community. And I think I've just mentioned, just in closing off, in terms of the model that we've used here, in the other Ambers, it's all currently sectional title, but with the senior living community, we've gone to a life right model, and part of our rationale there is just that we've really, in terms of this community, are invested for the long term. We want to be a part of the journey. In terms of the care, we don't really see it as a profit center. It's really just part of who Amber Glades is. And if you're looking for financial incentive, it's going to come down the line in terms of resales and in terms of people wanting to live in your community. So there's no incentive for us to provide care, additional care in terms of beyond what someone really needs. And so, we're very excited and looking forward to opening, and we've had a wonderful response from the community and from the tours we've taken people on. And that's really us in a nutshell. So I hope it sums things up enough, and obviously we can answer whatever questions might come along.
Thank you, Tim. Let me have a quick look. At this stage, no questions, but I'm sure before the end of the session, we'll have a few. So, Famida, would you do us the honor of giving us your perspective, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Steve, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this event. I think it's well done to you and the team in terms of putting this together. So I'm just quickly going to load my presentation. From the technical side, would they be able to put up my presentation?
Keith? Yep, we're on to it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the brief was to talk on the future of long-term care facilities. But I think before I do that, let me just give you a brief introduction in terms of TAFTA and who we are and what we do. And Keith, if you could maybe go on to the next slide. There we go. And can you play the video for me, please?
Through 6 decades of dedicated service, TAFTA has remained at the forefront of elder care, constantly developing its model to meet the needs of the aging population. Committed to alleviating the stress of the elderly and enhancing their quality of life, TAFTA has cemented its reputation as a leader in providing safe, sheltered housing and care for elderly people in need within the eThekwini region. It is our belief that growing old should not signal a loss of independence. It is the right of every person to enjoy dignity, care, and a sense of security in their old age. Leaders in innovative solutions for elders, inspiring a life worth living. TAFTA's vision aspires to a society where all people, including the elderly, are treated with respect and dignity, and to have the opportunity to live fulfilled lives. Fostering a culture of care based on TAFTA's core values of compassion, respect, cooperation, integrity, and service excellence, staff possess an innate desire to care for the elderly. This uncompromised standard of service has propelled the organization's mandate, touching the lives of more than 5,500 senior citizens in KwaZulu-Natal. But with the continued increase in demand comes the shortfall. South Africa is home to 4.42 million people over the age of 60, many of whom are unlikely to enjoy financial independence once retired. This is projected to increase by 7 million in 2030. According to statistics, 16% of retirees are solely dependent on state pensions. 31% will continue to work once reaching retirement age to earn a living. 47% rely on family and friends for financial support, and only 6% will retire independently. Adding to the plight of the aging population, many elders are faced with social issues including abuse, abandonment, lack of access to healthcare, and the impact of HIV/AIDS. In addition, more facilities and organizations that cater for elderly citizens are closing down, and those that have survived are unaffordable for most. In recent years, TAFTA has identified that one of the most successful ways of addressing deficits of this nature is to incorporate sustainable projects to ensure its longevity. Offering 12 residential facilities specially designed to address the housing requirements of senior citizens, TAFTA works to create an environment which caters to residents' specific needs of supportive services, security, and a continuum of care as required. It is through investments and ongoing support from donors and the broader public that will determine TAFTA's sustainability in elderly care and in accomplishing its vision.
Thank you, Keith. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Okay, thank you so much. So that was a very brief introduction into TAFTA and who we are, just so that I can contextualize my discussion as we move along. So as I started thinking about the future of long-term care, I think for me, whoever is on this in this conference, I basically just want you to remember 4 pictures as you leave this conference, just 4 things that I want you to think about when we think about the future of long-term care. Can you click to the next point, please, Keith? Right, so the first thing is around changing the narrative. And this is the narrative of long-term care. I think perhaps the most fundamental to the understanding of the future of long-term care would be to get consensus on what long-term care means. Traditionally, long-term care has been associated with frail care within a very defined environment and institution And I don't think that this view of long-term care is relevant in the changing world that we live in, especially within the climate of care and support of older persons. The World Health Organization defines long-term care as activities that are undertaken by others to ensure that those with significant and ongoing loss of physical and mental capacity can maintain a level of ability to do and be what they value. Now, this particular definition, I love it because there's so many facets to it. I think the first thing for me is what are the activities they are referring to? Secondly, who are the others? Who are the people who are the care partners in long-term care? Thirdly, how do you measure significant loss of ability and mental capacity? And for me, I think one of the fundamental questions is how do we integrate the desire to be and do what we want as older persons with society's desire to keep older people protected and safe? Excluded in this definition, in my opinion, is the whole concept of responsibility, and that is the older person's responsibility in terms of long-term care. The changing narrative, in my opinion, involves a shift in thinking about older persons as passive recipients of the benevolence of others. This is not going to work into the future. The changing face of older persons means that they want to be involved in the decisions that impact on them. And they want to be active members or active participants in the care relationship. So any discourse around long-term care has to take into consideration how do we incorporate discussions with older persons about what they need moving into the future. Another key aspect around changing the narrative of long-term care is that long-term care into the future is not going to be fixed to a place. It's no longer going to be an institution. Long-term care will not equate to frail care centers, and this is something that designers of care facilities need to consider. Long-term care will happen wherever people live, not particularly within a care unit. A third aspect around this definition of long-term care is that long-term care is not only defined as something that is only with older persons. And here is the curveball. Can our care units accommodate younger people as well? Because the definition basically says that we need to look at what older people want to be and do, and we need to consider that which they value. So if you have an older person who values intergenerational conversations, intergenerational connection, can your care units actually accommodate that? And that becomes quite a challenge for a number of people. Keith, the next point, please. So the next point I want to talk about in terms of the future of long-term care is the issue around building sustainability without compromising on care. My previous boss always said to me, start off by defining what you mean. And for me, sustainability is the ability to be maintained at a certain level or rate. Long-term care in its current form is not sustainable. It's not affordable, firstly. And secondly, it's not something that is viewed as relevant by the future generations of older persons. People don't want the same delivery of long-term care that we have had in the past. So what is it that we need to be thinking about? I think the previous older people have had a desire to be in a care home over an extended period of time. This is not the issue any longer. In strategizing the long-term care approach, sustainability has to be incorporated into every planning session. We have to plan to be sustainable. For example, 21 years ago when I started at Tafta, we had provision for 250 beds. Today we have less than 100 in terms of provision for frail care in that form. However, it doesn't mean that we have compromised in care in terms of the care that we provide. What has shifted is the binary definition of frail and not frail. Instead, what we've looked at is what is the continuum of care that is required and being able to provide the supportive mechanisms within that continuum. It's impossible to think about the possibilities of sustainability without some consideration of the most important resource in long-term care, and that is human resources. In business terms, long-term care is a labor-intensive business. It therefore follows that in the pursuit of sustainability, a capable and inspired workforce can make or break your business. Empowering and supporting the workforce will result in good outcomes, not just for your business, but also for the older persons. And I think perhaps that's the most important consideration. The next point, please, Keith. As we look into the future of long-term care, we must consider the opportunities to amplify our impact and share our knowledge. We have to move away from the territorialism and the protection of IP that seem to have defined our sector in the past, because the job is too big. There are too many older people that require assistance and support for us not to share our information. And why is this important? I think for two reasons. One is that it helps us to keep abreast of what's happening. Secondly, when we start getting excited about long-term care and start sharing that information, we also encourage others to be part of this conversation. And therefore, we start building in the interest around long-term care, and for future generations to look towards the sector of long-term care as future vocational prospects. Next point, please. And the last aspect around this discourse on the future of long-term care is the issue around incorporating the continuum of care into design. I alluded to this earlier on, but I think that long-term care in the present and into the future is about this continuum of care. And therefore, it becomes imperative that it is included in the design of human habitats right from the outset. The question we should be asking is, how does the design support the elder to age in place? Can the living arrangements be adapted to accommodate for changing abilities? In the design of the supportive environment, we have to ensure, or this will ensure, when we look at designing differently, it ensures our agility that is required when we want to look at our products being most relevant into the future. This is indeed a very brief presentation to plant some seeds on thoughts around long-term care. I appreciate the initiative by Arjo to work progressively towards unifying the sector and ensuring that we work to hold ourselves accountable to a standard of care. Because when we think about it, we are designing our world. We're designing whether we will flourish or whether we will be stifled in the world of tomorrow. And as we design, we need to ask ourselves, is the sign on the door going to say God's waiting room, or is it going to say that we have lived a damn fine life right until our last breath? I would like to think that our future will have both signs up. While we are in the waiting room, we are still enjoying a damn fine life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Famida. Well, it's a lot of information to take in. I think a few points there for me, Famida specifically. I really enjoyed what you said about holding ourselves accountable for the quality of care which we offer. This is going to be covered a little bit more later on in the session, where we look at the importance of, for lack of a better word, a grading scale for the homes in South Africa. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. It's a very simple formula, really, when you look at it. It's what is the challenge that we're facing, and what is the solution? But very important is the middle meat, which is how. How do we get there? And that's going to be an interesting session, which I'm sure will get quite a lot of people thinking about the importance of measuring care. Just to go to one question. It says, how dramatically has the implementation and partnership with Arjo affected the working pressure on caregivers? I'm not sure exactly how this is applicable to this session. However, has it freed up their day or not? I might as well answer this. I think the crux of using the Arjo solutions is that it does improve your workflows. Okay, it enables you to do more with less, and this is proven. Instead of having two people doing an in-bed wash, you can do it very effectively with one in a safe and dignified way. I just want to look at some of my notes here. The continuum of care, Famida, that's such an important point that you raised, because we know that residents are going to become less functional over time. And we need to make sure that the care which we're giving throughout their journey is as best as it can be. And I know that continuum of care can be both so-called help at home, or it can be in the kind of frail care setting. And I think at TAFTA you guys do have both of those options. And Tim, certainly I know in your development, this is going to be preference to have the help at home, otherwise known as aging in place. And I think this, again, will be touched on a little bit later when we hear from John in Australia regarding their 30-year journey and the ratio of help at home versus so-called frail care. So I think that is pretty much the summary of what I took. Also, the plan to be sustainable. You know, nothing's any good if it isn't sustainable. And we need to take special notice of the caregivers. You know, I like what you say, Famida, about this is a labor-intensive business, and we need to protect our caregivers as best we can. And going back to how do we do that, I think most important is, first of all, we start to use the right tools to assess risk, because we do have the mobility gallery. And in my opinion, this should be used on a daily basis, because we assess risk of pressure injury, we assess risk of slipping and falling, we assess risk of DVT development. But when do we assess the risk that we're going to put our caregivers under? Do we? In my opinion, this is something that needs a lot of attention, because our caregivers in South Africa are under pressure. Some would say a shortage of properly qualified caregivers, and those that we have, we need to nurture and protect. And I think that point of your presentation is important to note. It's a labor-intensive business, and we need to protect our hands that do the work at the sharp end of the business, for lack of a better saying. Tim, anything from your side, just before we wrap up? I think we've got another 7 minutes. I'm getting told 4 minutes.
Steve, I think you just touched on it a little bit earlier. You know, it's really around the aging in place and true aging in place. I think it's a term that's really been thrown around quite a bit at the moment. And you know, I think, and it's just it keeps coming through, and for me to sort of highlighted it as well, is that you've got to, in your design, take account of people's needs going forward. So people that are moving in currently quite vibrant and really full of life and able to, and for all intents and purposes, carry on quite normally without any assistance at all. But one's got to think ahead and how they're going to be most comfortable, and also how can you make it as possible for your staff and the kids to do their job as well as they can, and also to think about areas where the care staff can have a bit of a time out, and as much as they're integrated into the community, there will be times when they have some time and just to have a bit of a time out. And I think those sorts of design elements, you know, if you have the opportunity to start from scratch, just need to be thought about, and it really just talks to the whole sustainability of the model going forward for the community.
Sounds good, Tim. I think the other thing which is a take-home for me on this session is the sharing of knowledge. the old saying, knowledge is power. But I think the more aware we can be with regards to managing risks associated with immobility, ultimately, we're going to drive healthier outcomes, both mentally and physically, for residents and for staff. So, a great session, a great discussion. Tim, really appreciate you coming on. Famida, lovely to have you. Thank you for your insight. We have a plan with TAFTA, and I look forward to really uplifting the non-profit organizations in South Africa. Even if it's a little bit at a time, we've had some great progress with TAFTA. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. We look at what's happened at John Dunn House over the last 2 years, and I know that you guys have got plans to do that across the board with TAFTA on Ridge, John Conradi, phenomenal facilities with great staff. We are in it together. We've got a mountain to climb, but where there's hope, there's help, and Arjo are here to support you. So thank you. We really appreciate both of your time.
Thank you.
Steve, really appreciate it.
Good stuff.